would know Miss Abby Childers at Morgantown. She told me she signed up for some college work when she was around 30. So she hustled around, got up there, and signed in. And the professor told him, said, now, one thing I don't tolerate is being tardy. So everybody be on time. So the next morning she woke up, she had overslept, and her roommate had already gone. So she said she hustled up the hill and puffing and painting. And when she got there, she went in the back door and took her seat. And the professor stopped talking and pointed his finger at her and said, young lady, tell us who you are and where you're from. She said, I stood up, but I don't know who I am. She said, I don't know. He said, where are you from? She said, I don't know. So he said, well, sit down. So she sat down, she got back up, and she said, I'm not thinking well. She said, I'm late, as you know, and I wasn't supposed to be. So she said, I am Abby Kitchens, and I'm from Morgantown, Butler County. So she said she got a lot of ha-has over there. So you just have to overlook when I make mistakes. Because I'm no speaker, as you've already found out. As far as Provo School, I started my first year here in 1924. Cecil Roan was my teacher. And I loved school always. I always couldn't wait till school started from year to year. And I liked it so much that I went through the 8th grade twice. I couldn't go to, well, no way back then to go to school. And besides that, we didn't have the money to go. My uncle told me that he would send me to school and pay for my boarding and for the books. And I couldn't leave my mom and daddy. I loved school, but I didn't get to go because I didn't want to leave home. But we had, at one year, we had 63 people enrolled in this one building. Wow. By the way, this has been built on, right?
Yes.
This school, this area here is where we had our school. Yeah, and the year that we had that number, Miss Sula McKinney was our teacher. And we had, to begin with, we had, most of our teachers were from this community during the years that I went to school. It was Cecil Roan, Frank Brown, George Brown, Gertrude Brown, Miss Sula McKinney, and Miss Donnie Roan filled in part of the time. And there probably were others, but those were the ones in the early years. And then Forrest West taught a couple of years here. And then Shug Morgan came, well, thanks Morgan, but his name was Shug to us. He taught. So we were fortunate to have good teachers throughout the years. So if anyone wants to ask any questions, I'll try to answer. But
one of the oldest landmarks in Provo would be the church.
The church, our church was in 1804. Monticello Church became into being. On the very beginning, it was over at New Midway Church, and then it came over in this area. And we're very fortunate to have, throughout the years, to keep our doors open at the church, and everyone is always welcome. No one's ever been turned away. And if anyone would like to visit anytime, you're welcome there.
How many stores did this community support?
We had 2 stores, on Phelan Green, up the road just about so many yards from this one. And this one was started, I think this store started in this area about early 19, maybe 15 or 16.
Who ran it?
At the time, it had several different owners. There were some of the Brown family and some of the Roan family at one time. And then Mr. Clarence Straw, they went in partners. The early years, most of them would have 2 or 3 involved into it, different families. And the one that ran it the longest was my mother's brother, Thurman Penley. He operated from 1916 till 1938.
Was the post office always in the store?
Yes, up until about probably 1940, 39 or 40. It's changed postmasters, and it was, Miss Gertrude Wilson built a small building back behind the dwelling place over here across the road, and held the post office there for possibly 2 years, and then they built the building standing over in this direction where Patricia Forbes lived, and the post office was moved there. And then Cecil Wilson became postmaster after Miss Gertrude did. That was her son, and then Jim and Melba Holman took it over then. Melba was postmaster at that time after her mother passed away, and then it was moved up to where Jim and Melba Holman lived, and Jim Holman was postmaster there, and Melba was postmaster at Rochester.
Tell us what you did in World War II.
Well, I went to Evansville. We went to Evansville to work in the factories, where I worked at Briggs, where they made automobiles beforehand, and then they went into building planes, Corsair planes. So I worked there at Briggs building on the Corsair planes, and my husband, Chick, worked at Surveyall on the
She was a Rosie the Riveter.
yes. For a time, I was Rosie the Riveter. Then then I was sent into what was called the dope room, a huge, long room with those big airplane wings in there. And my job there was, you take a 5-gallon bucket and go and drain fluid out of a big old barrel, and you had a big old brush, and we painted the wings with fiberglass. Wasn't very pleasant to smell.
And you have an unusual first name. Tell us how you got that.
Well, I was named by my cousins, Arowana, and it came from a love song that supposed to have been a true thing that happened. This man from Ireland, I think it was Ireland, Scotland, someplace.
Ireland.
Anyhow, he fell in love with this Indian maiden, and he wanted her to marry him. So he composed this song. It went something like, I won't sing, I promise. Arowana upon the Anna, I'm in love with you. Arowana upon the Anna, do you love me too? Arowana upon the Anna, I'll be good to you. Arowana upon the Anna, come away. I want to love you. And then it goes on and on. So but that was part of it.
That's how you got you.
And I was named after that song by my cousins, Ernestine and Opaline Holder.
You know how Provo got its name?
I understood that Miss Lena Roan named it Provo after Provo, Utah. She had read a book, and she came up with that name. prior to that, I don't recall just what the name of it was. Also, Lazy, our school at one time was named Lazy Shade. And Miss Lena Rome gave that the name of Lazy Shade because some of the family had donated the ground to build the school on. And our school building was over behind where the tennis court is, first school I ever went to. And it faced the road, and it had kind of high steps going up. My first day of school, this is not very interesting to you, but I remember. My first year of school, the road went right, here's the schoolhouse, and the road was right close to it. It going down into another area beyond the school. And Foshin Penley was hauling logs, and he would come in for dinner, and he drove the team real close to the schoolhouse, and I stuck my arm out the window, didn't have screens on the window. I stuck my arm out to wave at him because he was one of my favorite people. And he flipped his big old whip and hit me across the hand, and it raised a big blister. He didn't do it, he was doing that to say hello to me. And he knew I liked to hear him pop that big long leather whip. Of course, my teacher come and picked me up and put me in his lap and helped me all the time. He went through another class, and he'd pick up my hand and he'd go and I'd put it back down, but he took time out to be sure that my hand got some air. He went right ahead and taught that whole class, and I thought that was so sweet of him. He kept me on his knee until he got that class over with.
I'm gonna tell one on her. It's on me too. When I started school here, I'm gonna let her tell what she did every day. Everybody else might as well know it, but I hear about it.
I'm not gonna tell
Does it have to do with your clothes?
Yeah. Go ahead and tell it.
No, you tell it. You're the one that started.
Whose fault is it?
Anyway, when I started school, I don't know, I think I know the answer to that, she told me. When I started school every day, during lunch time, she would come down here and bring me and change the clothes. Every day. When I first grade.
I'm sorry.
But then he graduated from here and went to Rochester, and from there to Morgantown, and guess what? She ironed his pants for him until I think he finally learned, because she didn't crease them as well as he liked.
Now, that was after he got married. That wasn't my fault. I didn't do that.
I'm just checking your memory, Mom. Just to make sure.
Why don't you tell them when you got the first telephone?
Do what?
Tell them when we got the first telephone down here.
Well, I don't remember that.
Was this
I remember
almost-
getting the first phone, but what?
The year, what year was it?
What year was it?
The telephone. Now, I'm not positive about that.
Electricity?
Electricity, we got electricity in 1949, the 19th day of July. But the telephones, there weren't, I do remember when there weren't, but very, very few telephones in the community. And the first radio I ever heard was over at Uncle Cal Roan's, and it had, he would sit in a big old chair and had the big old things on his ears, and so I was over there one day, and his byword was, "I jolly." He said, "I jolly, Wanda, would you like to hear something?" And of course I was bashful, but I said yes. And he took the earpieces and put them on my ears, and that was the sweetest music. He was listening to music. He said, "This is what I like." So that was my first radio that I ever saw or got to hear. And then there, at that time, it was said there was only about 3 in the community. Uncle Calhoun and Uncle Grattan Penley and Uncle Thurman Penley that had the store and lived in his dwelling here. Those were the